Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons where we try and take a darker tone with everything we do here. So if you like edgier kind of content, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do for us is absolutely amazing. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as the link to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game on Wednesday nights. Check us out. Without further ado, we're going to jump into this week's video. We're talking about the RUNECHILD. The RUNECHILD comes for us from Taldorei Reborn. This is again that Critical Role campaign setting that they released. This had to be with one of the characters that was originally part of the first campaign that was never, that didn't really stay very long because there's a lot of issues about that. But you'll see that if you ever wanted to be really interested in it. I'm going to try and steer away from that because that's just kind of a whole nother discussion. But I'm going to read the flavor text like all the other Taldorei campaign setting character subclasses, just so you can get an idea of what this character is in case you're not familiar with it. The mysterious weave and flow of magic is feared by many folk across Exandria. But while some spellcasters study the essence and nature of magic in hope of learning to harness it, sorcerers possess an innate talent to sculpt and wield the errant strands of power that shape the world. For some sorcerers, the body becomes a conduit for this power, which is collected and stored in the form of natural runes, and which sees a sorcerer named as a RUNECHILD. The talents of a RUNECHILD are rare, and sorcerers with this origin are sought after to study by mages and scholars alike, driven by a prevalent belief that the secrets of their runes can help understand the mysteries of their magic. Others sometimes seek to enslave RUNECHILD sorcerers, using their bodies as tortured spell batteries for diabolic pursuits. RUNECHILD sorcerers were subjugated throughout the age of the Arcanum, and many of their contemporaries now search for ways to hide their essence, a task that isn't easily given the revealing nature of their gifts. So again, this is a very unique kind of sorcerer, as it does involve with like a give and take of essence runes, which is kind of like your big defining feature. Now, essence runes is something you get at level 1. Your body begins to express your innate magic as runes traced out across your skin. You start with one essence rune and gain an additional rune whenever you gain a level in this class. These runes can manifest anywhere on your body, though usually the first manifests on the forehead. Your essence runes remain invisible when inert. At the end of a turn during which you spend one or more sorcery points, a number of these essence runes equal to the number of sorcery points you spent begin to glow with stored energy, becoming charged runes. You use these charged runes to power your RUNECHILD subclass features. Also, as a bonus action, you may spend a sorcery point to convert 2 essence runes into 2 charged runes. If you have 5 or more charged runes, you emit bright light in a 5-foot radius and dim light for an additional 5 feet. If you expend a charged rune to use one of your RUNECHILD features, it returns to being an inert essence rune. Any charged runes also revert to inert essence runes after you finish a long rest. So spending a sorcery point gives you a rune, or makes a rune visible, so they appear on you, and as you get more of them, if you hit 5, you then begin to shine brightly. So you imagine these things kind of popping up on your forearm, your forehead, your neck, anything that's kind of really exposed, kind of figure that's where they're going to be. You also gain at first level runic magic. At the beginning of first level, you learn additional spells. When you reach certain levels in this class, as shown as the runic spells table, each of these spells counts as a sorcerer spell for you, but doesn't count against the number of spells you own. You know, when you gain a level in the class, you can replace one spell gained from this feature with another spell of the same level. The new spell must be an adjuration or transmutation spell from the sorcerer, warlock, or wizard spell. I mean, it kind of depends on what you're doing and how well your spell knowledge is. The warlock and wizard classes do give you a bunch of cool spells, but again, they have to be abjuration or transmutation. So a bunch of defensive spells and kind of utility spells, but there are a couple of transmutations that do really cool things. But this is, again, one of those things that you really need to sit down and understand what you're trying to build and what you're trying to do with those spells and how that kind of affects the kind of group you're in. You gain one more ability at first level, because you kind of gain a lot, is Glyph of the Aegis. Starting at first level, you can release the stored arcane power within your runes to absorb or deflect threatening attacks. Whenever you take damage, you can expend any number of charged runes as a reaction. Roll a number of d6s equal to the number of runes you expend, reducing the damage by that total. When you reach 6th level, you can touch a creature as an action and expend up to 3 charged runes to transfer your protective power to it for up to 1 hour. The next time that creature takes damage, within the next hour, it rolls 1d6 per charged rune spent and reduces the damage by the total. You can't transfer this power to a creature already under the effect of Glyph of the Aegis, and your Glyph of Aegis dies and becomes a d8 at 14th level. It's the Glyph of the Aegis died. Instead of being a d6, it becomes a d8 at 14th level, which is pretty high in consideration. So this is kind of your first big move with using your runes, as you can reduce damage based on how many runes you decide to spend. Again, this is based on how many sorcery points you spent in a day, so it's better towards the end of the day as you have more that you've probably spent. It does not reset if you recharge sorcery points via like the Bloodwell Vial or by consuming spell slots, but it does add up, and it doesn't seem to be any kind of cap to it. At 6th level, you gain Sigillic Augmentation. You can channel your runes temporarily bolster your physical capabilities. When you make a strength, dexterity, or constitution ability check, you can expand a charged rune as a reaction and gain advantage on the roll. In addition, when you are forced to make a strength, dexterity, or constitution saving throw, you can use your reaction to expend a charged rune to gain advantage on the saving throw. Once you've used this feature in this way, you can't use it in this way again until you complete a long rest. This is hard because if you did need to pass a check, whatever it might be, one of those like really, really important checks to jump a chasm or something like that, you never know when it's going to be the best use of this. So a lot of people would hold this ability until the last possible moment to kind of try and really save it for something. But it does kind of put you in that situation where you saved an ability to the end of the game and you never used it once. That's really, really important. You got to use the ability to make it worthwhile. But this is very, very limited, as it's only once per long rest. You also, at 6th level, gain Manifest Inscriptions. You can reveal hidden glyphs and enchantments around you. As an action, you expend 1 charge rune to reveal hidden or invisible arcane traps, marks, runes, wards, sensors, or glyphs within 60 feet of you. They glow within a dim light in a 5-foot radius for 1 minute. And you have advantage on our intelligence arcana checks to discern the nature of any magic revealed in this way for the duration. If the glyph you reveal means something in a language you can't read, you can understand them while they are glowing as if you knew that language. This is kind of like a souped up detect magic, because it does kind of detect a lot of the things that aren't being carried by party members, armors, and magic items like that. It is specifically designed to uncover things. It's a very adventuring based ability. It is just kind of unique in that 6th level, everything you get is very, very niche. At 14th level, you gain Runic Torrent. You can channel runic energy to overpower even the staunchest defensive. When you cast a spell, you can expend 2 charge runes to call the spell to deal force damage instead of its usual damage type. Additionally, all creatures targeted by the spell or within the spell's area must succeed on a strength saving throw against your spell save DC, or be knocked prone and push up to 15 feet away from the spell's point of origin. Your choice. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you complete a short or long rest. I'm going to kind of just get through all of this and kind of explain how a lot of this is kind of meant to work. So just bear with me. This is a little unique because, again, this came out before Tasha's, before they gave you the ability to change the damage type of a spell. So this is very unique at that point in its release. And the final ability you gain is Arcane Exemplar. You can use a bonus action to expend a charged rune to become a being of pure magical energy. While in exemplar form, you gain the following benefits. You have a flying speed of 60 feet. Creatures have disadvantage on saving throws against your sorcerer spells. You gain resistance to damage dealt by spells. Whenever you cast a spell of first level or higher, you regain hit points equal to the spell's level. Your exemplar form lasts until the end of your turn. However, you can expend a charge rune at the end of your turn, no action required, to extend the duration until the end of your next turn. When your exemplar form ends, you are stunned until the end of your next turn. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you complete a long rest. I know that's kind of a lot to kind of swallow, but understand the way this kind of whole RUNECHILD works, it's like a defensive sorcerer. Because your main feature that you gain the most leverage out of and most use out of is Glyph of the Aegis, where you expend a number of charged runes and you roll a d6 up until you're level 14, at which point it turns into a d8 to reduce damage spelled to you. So that will help you with obviously anything you're channeling, because if you reduce that overall damage, it makes that save to make it still channeling that much better. Outside of that, it's really not that big of a use. You kind of want to be ranged and stay away with this kind of a sorcerer. So you're going to be relying on doing ranged damage and staying in the back, which should reduce the overall damage you take normally. But Glyph of the Aegis is a great way to kind of reduce that. The caveat is you have to spend sorcery points in order to get these charged runes. So you do have to spend them in order to use them. So it does kind of force you to be more regular with your sorcery point use and be not so reserved with them, because that's kind of a big part of this kind of character. Sigillic augmentation, again, it's a trade up whether you're going to use it for a check or a saving throw. I in all honesty, strength and dexterity for saving throws, dexterity is the one that you're going to use a lot for like fireball and things like that. Don't get me wrong, advantage on a fireball, dexterity save is a great thing because you'll take half damage. You can be a bunch of things and get items and stuff like that to gain resistance to fire damage. It's a tough thing because strength, most of them, they're either going to push you away or grapple you. Constitution, it's probably something related to poison. And in that kind of a situation, you kind of forced as a player to suffer the indignities of being poisoned, which is way more detrimental than the opponents or the enemies being poisoned. So there is some sort of reasoning to understand why you might want to have this. I would probably save it more often for checks, because for Constitution saving throws, you're already proficient. Outside of Charisma, Constitution is really the only thing you really have to worry about. Dexterity, it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build up your armor class, if you're using mage armor and things like that, then yeah, dexterity is important. It's a toss-up. I personally think checks might be a little bit better of a use for it, because you might be liable to make these checks, and these might save your life or kill you. Whereas a saving throw is basically combat-oriented, so you can really just position yourself in a way out of it, or you can find some other circumstance to resist it, like counterspell. But it is something that you only get one use out of per day, and that makes it very, very difficult to use adequately, because it puts you in that, oh no, I gotta save it for the best possible moment, as opposed to just using it. And that's a real problem. Manifest Inscription is purely for adventuring. There doesn't seem to be a limit on it, but if you're spending a charged rune, you're losing out on Glyphs of the Aegis, which is still your best use of your essence runes. Once you hit 14th level, that ability is unique. For 2 charged runes, which at 14th level, spending 2 sorcery points is pretty easy, because you'll probably quicken spell a bunch of stuff at this point, or twin spell something. So getting this up would be pretty regularly used, I can see. Changing the damage type, very useful, because if you're fighting a whole bunch of red dragons and now you throw a fireball as a force damage, you really kind of hit a very big difference in what that spell does. And the availability to push something 15 feet away is great tactfully, but it depends on your party. It depends on what you're doing. If you have environmental effects up spells that require people, if they get into them, they have to make a save, or a bad thing will happen, this becomes better. It all depends on your party members and how they're situated and what the circumstances are, but pushing them away can save you from taking damage, some serious damage, and can save some people from being surrounded or in really bad spots. It's more tactical, but again, you can only do it once per short or long rest, so you do have to be very reserved with using this, even though it does cost essence runes, which seems to be a circumstance that you might have difficulty burning through if you're positioned or if you're in a party that's very tactical and very smart combatively. The final ability, Arcane Exemplar, is wild. Creatures having disadvantage on saving throws against your spells is insane. It really makes boss fights have a very different connotation if you throw this up and you happen to spend 3 essence runes to keep it going and dropped saving throw after saving throw after saving throw. Resistance to damage dealt by spells is very powerful because at 18th level you're fighting a lot of things that deal spell damage. Regaining hit points on whatever spells you cast, very big benefit. You do have resistance to damage to spells, which I already said, but you have a flying speed. You do not have hover. So if you are 60 feet and someone knocks you prone, you are plummeting 60 feet. And you do not have resistance to that damage type because that's bludgeoning. But this is something you need to extend till the end of combat. You need to kind of gauge that, because you being when you being stunned for a turn is detrimental at 18th level. Someone will probably be knocked unconscious or be flat out killed at that point. So avoiding that is an absolute necessity. This is like I've got to do everything I can to go home. You to keep this thing going. You really, really need to keep your spell slots being consumed and being moved. The problem is you have to be very mindful of your resources, because you might need to spend spell slots as you're casting spells in order to make sure you're continuously recharging your charged essence runes. Otherwise you might fall short and then stunned, and then all sorts of terrible things will happen to you, because once you're stunned, any kind of channeling spells you have are down, and then everything is just going to run up and destroy you. Everything at 18th level is smart enough to see if a sorcerer goes stunned and is unconscious or is not moving for one round, they will swarm you and they will destroy you. It is an easy victory for them. But that's kind of the way this whole subclass is built around. It is one of those subclasses where it has a couple of cool skills, but it's hard to mitigate how to play this effectively. You are kind of based around using your Glyph of the Aegis constantly, but it requires you a huge amount of resources that you don't actually have, because you're always running out of sorcery points and needing to consume spell slots in order to use them. But if you're using more spell slots than you're using essence runes, you're having a problem. If you're not adequately doing the things you need to with your sorcery points to win the encounters in any circumstance, you are at a bad situation, and it makes your essence runes worthless, because you're never going to have enough to do anything with it. And it kind of sits you in a situation where you have to play a new playing style in order to use this. It's very risk and reward, but it's really more so about consumption. You have to be continuously feeding upon your own sorcery spells, and in situations where you can get the most out of using them regularly, and a lot of that is really dangerous. With that all said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. If you've made it this far into the video, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do for us is amazing. And a big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game. Check us out Wednesday nights. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.